You're listening to the Fresh Hell podcast. Fresh Hell contains stories of a disturbing and often graphic nature and is intended for a mature audience. Please don't let your kids listen to this, or they might turn out like us. Hi, I'm Annie in the US.
And I'm Johanna from Austria, and you're listening to your favorite international podcast. The podcast hosted by two women who never met in real life, but who talk about murder like most people talk about the weather. And it's hot.
It's so hot. Before we start, we want to take a second to shout out our newest Patreon members. Thank you to Michelle Young, POSI Posey 84, Robbie, and Jared Riley. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We are glad to have you in the Fresh Hell family, and your support has immediately gone to Dr. Costumes for our current Cinema Macabre episodes. So thank you for funding this vital work. And to everyone else who's already been with us on Patreon, you know who you are. Thank you genuinely for keeping this whole thing running. You're the reason that we can do what we are doing here today. If you're listening right now and you're not a patron member yet, first of all, what are you waiting for? Head over to patreon.com/freshhellpodcast, where you'll get early ad-free episodes, our monthly live get-togethers, bonus content like the aforementioned Cinema Macabre, and the immense personal satisfaction of knowing that you are helping to fund two women's ongoing obsession with dead people.
Mostly dead people.
Yeah. Every single pledge, no matter the tier, really truly makes a difference and helps to keep this show going. Sincerely, we can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Also from me, of course. All right, let's just get into today's episode. This is part 2 of the Rosemarie Nitribitt case. Quick note on the sources. 2 big sources, next to obviously newspaper and magazine articles, were, first of all, the book Rosemarie Nitribitt, Autopsie eines deutschen Skandals by Christian Steiger, as well as season 2 of the podcast Dunkle Heimat. I very rarely, Annie, you know it, I very rarely listen to other podcasts for our cases. Imposter syndrome and all this, I'm so worried to mess things up.
Same.
Yeah, same, right? But this podcast is excellent. They did a 10-episode deep dive, and one of their episodes gave me so much information when it came to establish the main suspect's timeline. So thank you for that, because they had access to the police files. It's amazing. If you're a German speaker, please check it out. It's so good. All right. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, please go back and do that first. And if you need a quick recap, Annie, could you please?
Okay, so quick recap for anyone just joining us for part 2. Rosemarie did not have an easy start in life, to put it mildly. She was basically raised by the state instead of her own family. She bounced around homes and institutions, and when she was 11, something genuinely awful happened to her that nobody was ever arrested for. Think Star Faithful. By the time she's a teenager, she is more or less on her own, and by the early 1950s, she lands in Frankfurt with nothing. No money, no safety net, nothing to lose. And then she just rebuilds herself completely. She teaches herself French and English, how to hold herself in a room full of rich men, and she goes straight for Frankfurt's wealthiest clients. And it works. Within a few years, she has her own apartment, she's driving a Mercedes 190 SL, and allegedly there's a whole list of very powerful, very well-connected men who are paying for her time. Industrialists, maybe politicians, heirs and nepo babies, and that's pretty much where we left her last week. Right around the time her cleaning lady noticed something was wrong, and Rosemarie Nitribitt was found dead on her own living room floor. So that is where we are picking up today. I'm really very salty about the fact that this happened to her. I was rooting for her. I was cheering her on and all right.
All right. Now, I already talked about it last week, but let's go through what the police found again. And it's really bad. And it's also where this whole case kind of starts going sideways. So she is found lying on her living room floor, one leg propped up on the sofa, one leg down on the floor. And it looks like there was a struggle, not just because of her position, but also because the furniture was in a bit of disarray. There's a bloodied towel underneath her head. And last week I mentioned a glass ashtray, and I read that in some sources, but in others not. But I'm gonna get there. Yeah. Anyway, something was used to deliver a serious blow to the back of her skull, to the back of her head. And they also find marks of strangulations around her neck. And so the official cause of death ends up being manual strangulation after a blow to the head, so after something like a fight. And I wondered about that already last week, and I tried to find out more about it. It stated that she was in advanced decomposition, or in a state of advanced decomposition, because remember, it probably was like around 3 days that she was lying there, maybe. Also, we're gonna get into that. And we already kind of speculated about the heat, so apparently that's indeed what happened. Apparently the heating was turned up all the way to 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and some speculate that it was done by the murderer specifically to speed up decomposition and therefore obscure evidence on the body. And I think that makes sense. First of all, I don't think she would have turned up the heating that much. She was very fleshy, but apparently also rather frugal. And I think when it came to such mundane expenses, I don't think she would have spent so much money on so much heating. Also, I'm the person who loves heat, especially in winter, obviously. But not even I would heat up a room to 30 degrees Celsius on purpose.
No, that's like an actual terrarium. It's too hot. No thanks.
I used to joke that I'm like a gecko.
Yeah. I my father-in-law in Florida all the time, I'll say to him, how are you in your little terrarium? And he loves it. You know, he's happy. I live in a freezer for him, so.
Anyway, by the time anyone gets the door open, the smell in the apartment is, by every account I read and heard about, completely overwhelming. And now the first officers on scene make a mistake that kind of ends up haunting this whole entire case. So they walk in and they're hit with this heat and this smell. And their instinct, and I think it's a totally human, understandable instinct, but nonetheless, it's a big no-no. So what they do is they fling the windows wide open to air the place out. And I know some people would think, well, what's the big problem with that? You know, they just wanted to let in some fresh air.
Yeah, but if you're a homicide investigator, it's really one of the worst things you could do.
Yeah, because guess what? Nobody had taken the room temperature and nobody had taken her body temperature. Also, to be fair, these are just police officers. They're not some murder department investigators yet. It's just everyday regular street cops, right?
Still, you know.
They shouldn't have done it, obviously, because they had no idea. Yeah. So now these windows are open and the apartment starts cooling down. And after days of artificial heat, now there's no longer any reliable way to work backwards and pin down exactly when she died. So this is all gonna end. It's gonna be a guessing game, more or less. And this is the moment that will be wiping out one of the most important pieces of forensic evidence in this whole case. And it definitely will become very important very soon. The police report to the Federal Criminal Police Office stated that Rosemarie had been found murdered by strangulation, and they settled on the afternoon of 29th of October 1957 as the presumed time of death. Another problem, there's also the fact that the original responding officers actively concealed their own screw-up from the BKA, remember? The BKA is the federal police.
Yes.
They didn't just admit to the mistake, which meant that for a good while, everyone was working with contaminated information, and they had no idea that they were having contaminated information.
Oof.
Which is...
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. Horrible failure. And this is then where the rumor started, like, because it looks almost too clumsy to be an accident. And the fact that there are alleged elite clients, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
We know, or even back then, people speculated who Rosemarie was and who her clients apparently were. And I mean, again, I think we can all imagine how quickly the rumor started to spread. And the speculation was that the investigation was being deliberately slow-walked or sabotaged by people with the money and influence to make sure certain names would never surface in courtroom or in the media.
I mean, it certainly wouldn't be the first time in history, right? We all know cases where we at least suspect things were botched on purpose or part of a larger cover-up. We just had that here.
Yeah, things got lost.
Yeah, like locally, the Karen Reed case, which is still now ongoing with the various civil cases, was like this, where it's just conspiracy theory on top of conspiracy theories. And some of them have some weight, it's wild.
And then the autopsy was carried out the day after her body was discovered. And despite the state of decomposition, the pathologists were still able to establish a number of important facts. So as I said, cause of death was clear. Rosemarie had suffered a blow to the head with a heavy object, causing catastrophic skull fracture. And as I said, I'm not really sure about the ashtray. I think that was maybe it was an ashtray, and some sources then thought that's what they assumed was the murder, or not the murder weapon, the weapon that they used to hit her over the head. I'm not so certain anymore, right? Because apparently in the autopsy report and in the police files, it says that they were never able to determine what caused that head injury. They couldn't even rule out, apparently, that it was caused by a fall, which that made me pause because it's so hard for me to buy that. Or at least I have some questions.
And I mean, I guess it's possible to fall and hit your head on an ashtray.
I mean, it is, but okay, forensics are so much better nowadays. But you'd think that even in 1950, they would already be able to know a bit more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also there was the towel under the head. I mean, she could have put it herself there. Well, we're going to speculate a little bit later.
Well, the towel under the head thing, I wonder, was she bleeding a lot? And did the person who killed her put a towel under? If they intentionally turned up the heat, in theory, and I know we're going to get into this later, but would it have made sense to put a towel between the head and the floor so that blood didn't seep through to the apartment below? I don't know.
With the concrete ceiling, I think you would need a lot of
With
blood.
concrete, then no. That's the thing. I don't know what your ceilings are. You know what I mean? Would it have just been a thin layer of something?
That was a newly built building. It would be a concrete.
Okay. So no, that doesn't make sense then. So, yeah, that's a lot to think about, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, wait, there's more. There was also fly larvae in her nostrils.
That's why you don't open the windows. Is that how the flies get in?
You mean the police officers now?
Yeah, because how did the flies get in?
Well, they must have been there before, because I don't think the fly larva was
They didn't immediately lay eggs?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Awful.
I mean, it's November.
Oh, yeah, all right, fine. That's true. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about fly larvae, so don't listen to any of my thoughts on this. I know nothing.
So I assume the fly was already in the apartment.
It must have been, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I don't like that. Anytime something's laying babies, it's just not...
Not in our bodies, please.
Nope.
What else? The autopsy also revealed that Rosemarie's stomach still contained partially digested rice pudding, which apparently was her favorite dish. Detectives had also found a pot of rice pudding on the stove in her kitchen, and there was no evidence that she had been shot or stabbed. And despite decades of speculation, the autopsy found also no indication that she had been sexually assaulted around the time of her death. But then I also wonder, how hard did they look?
Well, exactly. And we know from the research I did for the Star Faithful thing that, a lot of the times
you can't always tell.
There's nothing to see, even if you have been assaulted.
Yeah. And I have the feeling at that time and place, 1957, in West Germany, with them knowing that she was a call girl.
Yeah.
Would they have looked that hard?
Probably not.
For signs of sexual assault? Probably not. Right?
No.
Investigators also noted the absence of clear defensive injuries, so we don't know, was she caught completely by surprise because she knew and trusted the person who attacked her? She must have opened the door because there was no forced entry. Or Maybe she never had the chance to defend herself. It's, we will never know probably.
Was there anything missing in the apartment? Like, was she robbed as well as killed?
Good question. The jewelry, the fur coats, and some cash, that was all still in the apartment. But also there was a blue metal box that she kept in her living room, and allegedly it was supposed to contain more than 20,000 Deutsche Mark. But there was only 2,000 left in there. And that box also contained her little black book with her client list and her appointments, allegedly, I'm gonna say. But again, we're gonna talk more about that.
Yeah, and so the book was also missing?
No, the book was there.
The book was there, so it was just like 18,000 Deutsche Marks that were roughly missing.
Around it, yeah.
She could have used the money, but that feels like a lot of money. Like that's not what you would spend at the butcher's or even on a new coat or something, right?
Well, then there would be a new coat or a receipt or something, right?
Yeah.
If you buy something for 18,000, you have something to show for.
That's
what did we say? The 190 SL it was like, 12,000 mark?
Okay.
An average house for a family cost like 25,000 mark, so that's almost the equivalent
enough to buy a house.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah, this doesn't make sense that this much would be missing. No. Sorry, it's not always clear to me how much money things are worth and how much money is worth at various times.
No, I also have to figure it out always. I just remembered the 190 SL is like 3 years' salary for an average worker, which means that would be around almost 6 years. All right, now I need to walk you through just how badly this investigation gets botched, because honestly, this might make you want to scream into a pillow, so have one ready. We already talked about the windows, but that's just the start, trust me, because it's not just police and forensic technicians that walk through the apartment. No, pretty much everybody gets let in to have a look, like journalists and looky-loos. Why does this happen so often?
I hate it.
The Süddeutsche Zeitung, so newspaper from southern Germany, 50 years later described the scene, because one of their journalists was there, as basically, quote, perfect evidence destruction program, end quote, which I mean, yikes.
Oof,
that's all I can say.
That's rough.
And then a bunch of people are smoking the entire time, and they are flicking their cigarette butts out the window, and it lands off this little kind of flat top roof, or how you call it, flat rooftop, sorry. So now, even if there had been a usable cigarette butt from the actual killer at the scene, there's no way to tell it apart from the ones. But then, okay, they didn't have DNA testing back then anyway, but a brand.
Lipstick or not lipstick.
Yeah.
No. Come on, not the cigarettes. That's crime scene 101.
It's crazy. They treated it like kind of a party almost.
It's one of the few things you could use at a crime scene. I feel like in all of the old Perry Mason episodes I used to watch, the cigarette brand, whether or not there was lipstick on the cigarette. Cigarettes played a big role in solving crimes. How many cigarettes were at the scene so you knew how long they were there for. Come on.
My personal favorite, though, and you're gonna love it, investigators find a hat at the scene, and for several days they genuinely believe it belongs to the murderer. So this is a big lead, right? A hat. He left a hat. Except it then turns out to be the hat of one of their own detectives who took it off during the search and just forgot it there.
No.
And that same detective apparently also mishandles some of the photo evidence from the crime scene, kind of loses it or whatever. So that's one guy and one afternoon making two big mistakes. Like, awesome.
Was he a client?
I don't even know. Was he just like Officer Doofy? I don't know.
Oh, no.
And again, rather than immediately owning up to the window mistake and all the other things, they are just trying to conceal everything from the BKA when they hand the case over. And so at the time when this case finally gets even close to a trial and close to the courtroom, you've got no confirmed time of death. You have contaminated physical evidence and, fake leads that kind of stole days. Just wasted days during the investigation. False leads. Officers, investigators running after false things.
It's really frustrating.
So now we have the stomach contents. Then remember there were the bread roll deliveries and I think milk piling up in front of the door. Mm-hmm. And then the neighbor's account of when they last saw her and when they started to hear the dog. and people who met up with her on that day, 29th of October. And so they kind of establish a timeline, right? There was also another rather unexpected source, I'd say, because a Frankfurt press photographer named Micky Bonacker had spent the last few days of Rosemarie's life following her around the city, and that was an assignment for the newspaper he worked for, which was the Frankfurter Abendpost. At the time, of course, nobody had any idea that she was about to become the victim of one of Germany's most infamous unsolved murder cases. They were just like, this is an interesting personality in Frankfurt, just follow her around. Also, maybe they thought, wait, maybe we can figure out who's some of her clients,
That was lucky. And, of course, also a glamorous young woman driving around Frankfurt in a black Mercedes. She was attracting attention wherever she went.
Definitely, yeah. She was very well known in the city, yeah. And then after Rosemarie's body was discovered, Bonacker went to the police himself, and his photographs and notes then helped investigators confirm, where she'd been, who she met, when was she last seen, by who, what did she do, when was she still alive. And then together with the forensic evidence and the witness statements, the police then built a surprisingly detailed timeline of Rosemarie's final day. This is also interesting to me. Micky Bonacker wasn't the only photographer who happened to capture Rosemarie during the last days of her life. Another one was Kurt Weiner. He was a photographer for the Frankfurter Rundschau. But unlike Bonacker, he was not following her around. In fact, the photographs happened pretty much by accident. The Frankfurter Rundschau's newsroom was located directly across from Rosemarie's apartment building. And so on 27th of October, Weiner happened to be on the roof after visiting a colleague's studio when he looked across and spotted Rosemarie sitting in the open window of her apartment, her legs just propped up, and it looks in the photos like she's just enjoying the autumn sun. So he knows who this is. This is the famous call girl. And so he ran to get his camera and he came back and he took like 3 or 4 photographs with the telephoto lens. And this is the last known photo of Rosemarie, and she probably didn't even have an idea that she was even photographed.
She looks really relaxed.
She looks super relaxed, yeah. But also it kind of sucks. You're just enjoying the sun in your apartment and...
someone's taking pictures of you.
Yeah, I mean, you're not like a Hollywood celebrity that you have to fear paparazzi now.
Yeah.
Okay, so the established timeline was something like October 29th, 1957, last confirmed sighting. And then from the afternoon of the 29th through to the morning of 1st of November, nobody saw her. So that's 3 missing days, right? Nobody saw her, nobody checked in on her. And again, nobody thought anything of it because where is she? Monte Carlo maybe, who knows, who can say?
Yeah, but the dog. I hate the fact that her dog was crying and nobody investigated.
Yeah, it's sad. The dog makes me sad, but I promise you, I'm gonna tell you next week what happened to him. The dog was fine.
Okay, yeah.
And then obviously November 1st, the discovery of her body. This case pretty much immediately managed to not only attract German and European media attention, but also international attention. I found several articles, they're almost all identical, how it's always with these international cases. This is an article that was published in several newspapers at the beginning of December, and it shows how quickly rumors spread that men of power could be involved. This one is from The Republican from Wednesday, 4th of December, 1957, from page 11. And Annie, it's a newspaper from Springfield, Massachusetts. And as this is your neck of the woods, could you please read it?
It really, really was. All right. Quote, "Murder of smart girl is probed. West Reich tycoons won't be happy until all the pictures are found."
I hate that they call it West Reich, which is...
Yeah.
It's been 12 years, people.
I mean, Frankfurt, December 4th. Some of West Germany's most important industrialists are making hurried trips here to, quote, assist police investigation of the, quote, brainy blonde murder case. Rosemarie Nitribitt was beautiful, too, but police say it was her interest in technical subjects like optics and electronics that provided motivation for her strangulation. About all police have learned so far is that Rosemarie was a girl who liked to read and who knew how to apply the knowledge thus acquired. The Ruhr figures racing their Mercedes 300 limousines to Frankfurt are trying to learn, if they can, whether their photographs and voices were picked up by the cameras and tape recorders which Rosemarie concealed in her ritzy Frankfurt apartment. So many big names appeared to be involved that police have classified their probe top secret, but informants report the celebrity photo album scramble is, quote, fantastic. The brainy blonde's interest in Ruhr finance began 18 months ago with newspaper stories of a Dusseldorf call girl ring. Police arrested a Tony madam and 89 quote-unquote girls, some of whom turned out to be the wives of prominent Ruhr business and professional men.
Ooh,
I know, that's a lot. The call girl investigation disclosed that there apparently was big money to be had, helping relax the Ruhr's overworked tycoons. But what she read about the Dusseldorf scandal, plus her scanning of Confidential magazine, a big seller on German newsstands, convinced Rosemarie that the call girl racket was unsound, economically and protectively. There were too many hands stretched out for the call girl's money and too many police leaks. A smart girl, Rosemarie reasoned, should have no need to cut others into the racket. She also reasoned that it should be possible to automate the call girl trade, particularly in this cloak and dagger land of miniaturized spy gadgets. The upshot of Rosemarie Nitribitt's reflections was this simple and dignified listing in the Frankfurt telephone book. Nitribitt, Rosemarie, model. Only Rosemarie didn't go to her clients. They came to her elegant apartment where she lived alone with a brown French poodle. I'm sorry, but that's not alone. She lived with a brown French poodle.
Exactly.
Ugh.
Also, was he brown? He doesn't look so brown in the photos.
I think he might be brown. It's hard to tell in black and white photographs.
That's true.
He has a really perfect surprised poodle face. It's like, he just always looks startled. She required some initial help in installing her concealed wall cameras and tape recorders, but the model even learned to operate and maintain these without assistance. Rosemarie became widely admired in the Ruhr money set as a tired businessman's intellectual. Soon, she had all the clients she could manage. Since she had no one to cut in, Rosemarie's wealth accumulated fast. Her rakish black Mercedes-Benz sports car was the envy of Frankfurt's hot car set. But Rosemarie also banked her money. Police report that her accounts in various Frankfurt banks ran into 6 figures. Once established, and her cameras and recording devices operating smoothly, Rosemarie tapered off on work and relied increasingly on her automation. She began blackmailing her wealthy clientele. This apparently was successful to a point. The point was reached as police reconstruct her death early on a Sunday morning. But it was 2 days before the model was found dead. Neighbors became suspicious only after milk bottles and breakfast rolls began accumulating outside her apartment door. When police entered the apartment, they found her poodle standing a death watch at her side. But whoever killed Rosemarie left intact most of the photographs, the tapes and notebooks, or so the police say. End quote. Okay.
There's a lot going on.
Wow.
And we will be talking about all the blackmail allegations next week. But there's a lot in this. It's very salacious.
It's very salacious. Yeah.
You can see why there are a lot of potential suspects, right?
Yeah. What about her friends and family? Was there anyone who could know something there?
Thank you. this is an excellent question. Gives me a great segue.
You're welcome.
To one of the early police suspects, a man named Heinz Pohlmann. He's 34, he's a traveling salesman, or he was, and this is very important, he's not, nor ever was, a client. Some people claim he was her pimp, but I don't think that's true either. According to most accounts from contemporaries, she didn't have a pimp, and also the newspaper article, she didn't have to cut anyone in, right? Pohlmann apparently was just a friend, a genuinely close one by most accounts. He's either gay or bisexual. Nobody can say for sure, because in a police interrogation, he claimed that he's only 30% gay, which could also be like, it's 1957 and being homosexual is still a criminal offense in West Germany. So
it's not safe. No.
Yeah. Who can say? So yeah, even without him being a murder suspect, he already is kind of suspicious.
Yeah, I think that his sexuality is probably really convenient if you're looking for someone to hang this whole situation on.
Definitely, yeah. But I also have to say, I don't like him personally very much. I don't think he's a good character, and we're going to talk about everything. Because there is more. Heinz Pohlmann wasn't exactly what you'd call a model citizen. He already had a criminal record from the days after World War II or end days of World War II. He'd been convicted of looting, and then after the war there were convictions of fraud and embezzlement. So there's a lot of petty crime, and it kind of spirals and snowballs a little bit. If I remember correctly, he had around 20 previous convictions.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. And he also had a reputation for exaggerating. He loved presenting himself as more successful than he really was. He was always dressed like perfectly. He was kind of like a gentleman. He dressed flawlessly in his suit and dark sunglasses. I mean, he looked great. He also was described being very charming. Somebody you could go out partying and who kind of, he was fancy. But he was also aggressive at times. He had a temper. There are a lot of things. I heard in this one podcast, they talked about how he was known for, like, he picked up young male sex workers and drove them out to the forest and paid them for sex. And then he just left them in the forest and drove back to the city without them. And this happened more than once because he was kind of known for that kind of behavior.
All right. So yeah, he's kind of a dick, but he's not murdering them in the forest.
He's not murdering them in the forest, but yeah, as I said, he has kind of things with being aggressive, beating people up, and he's also kind of presenting himself as like a charming, intellectual, tough guy, if that makes sense. It's a weird combination.
He's a con artist.
He's definitely a con artist, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a great guy. I can understand why she was kind of attracted to him, not in a romantic or sexual way, attracted like as a person to hang out with. Mm-hmm. They were both kind of outsiders, maybe.
That's it. And they both had kind of a troubled background.
Yeah. I also think it was maybe not real. I'm very assuming here. But to me, it sounds like it was not really real friendship, at least not from his side, more transactional. Not that he didn't like her or anything, but I think it was a lot of transaction. What can I get out of this person? And maybe for her, it was like, I don't know, maybe he also used her as a beard. Maybe she used him as kind of a protection because she didn't have a pimp. So at least there was...
I just keep thinking also that there's something when you are in sex work, like this woman, like if you've had a history of sexual abuse and then you go into sex work, having someone that you know isn't sexually interested in you is deeply appealing.
Yes, I agree. I know exactly what you mean. But then there's also this kind of speculations that there was something sexual going on between them.
Sure, there could be. Yeah.
Also, they found like his pubic hair in her bed, but I mean, there are several ways how this sleepover, I don't know. I heard again in this podcast, they read from the police
reports,
interrogation files, and he talked about how there were sexual encounters where he was in the same room while she was having sex with someone, or he picked up young men and promised them, you want to have sex with Rosemarie Nitribitt for free and things like this. So
Okay.
maybe there was some things they shared sexually.
Yeah. It was a complicated relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it.
The big problem, though, was his finances. Financially, things were not great for him. Because by the autumn of 1957, he was already drowning in debt. He'd recently lost his job as the sales representative because he was accused of embezzling around 11,000 Deutsche Mark, so the equivalent of 190 SL. And altogether, all his debts were probably around 21,000 Mark.
Oh man, that's like 2 Opel Capitans.
Yeah, definitely heirloom carpet money, heirloom. And now he has all these creditors and they're closing in on him. And of course, another charge and conviction was looming because of the embezzlement. And so by several accounts, he was desperately trying to borrow money wherever he could. And guess what? Within days after Rosemarie's death, Pohlmann suddenly had money again. All of a sudden, he was able to repay large chunks of his debt, and he made substantial payments to his former employer. And then, most importantly, and also very interestingly, he bought himself a slightly used Mercedes 190.
An SL?
No, apparently the limousine version.
Okay. So here's a man who's practically broke one week, then suddenly starts spending thousands of marks the next, and she's missing thousands of marks. Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, and that's only one of the reasons he became their favorite suspect immediately. The other one was much simpler. He was the last known person to see Rosemarie alive.
Huh.
So, according to his own account, he hadn't simply decided to drop by unannounced that day. He claimed that 2 days earlier, so on 27th of October, he had met Rosemarie briefly downtown, and during that quick meeting, she supposedly asked him to come over and see her on 29th of October. Then on the morning of 29th of October, something had changed because she called him and asked him to come over sooner than originally planned, and Heinz Pohlmann later told the investigators that Rosemarie had sounded very frightened during the phone call. And that is something I read several times, that multiple times Rosemarie had hinted at being scared, not only to Heinz but to different acquaintances, or apparently she also sometimes said things like, one day someone will smash my head in.
Oh,
things
I
like that,
hate it. I really hate that she was murdered, and I really don't want it to be her friend. Ugh. All right.
She calls Heinz Pohlmann and she sounds scared, and because of that, he decides to arrive about 2 hours earlier than originally planned. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he rings her doorbell at the apartment in Stiftstraße 36, I'm sorry. So Rosemarie answers the door and she's wearing like a gray wool house suit. She's not wearing any makeup, her hair wasn't done, and she's in the middle of cleaning her apartment. And according to Pohlmann, she simply looked like someone doing chores at home. Nothing, flashy or fancy or extravagant about it.
Just a regular day.
Just a regular doing chores at home day in your favorite leisure suit.
Yeah, as you do.
As you do. Relatable. He tells her he has a cold, so she offers him a schnapps. And then while he's there, around approximately 2 p.m., the housekeeper, Erna Krüger, arrives. She arrives with a replacement for a vase that she had broken the previous day. And Rosemarie starts berating her and scolding Erna for the broken vase, and all of this escalates into Rosemarie accusing Erna of stealing from her. And then Erna, probably rightfully upset, leaves, and then Pohlmann starts preparing rice pudding in the kitchen using condensed milk because there wasn't any fresh milk left in the apartment. Actually, according to him, the only things in the fridge that day was butter and champagne.
I'm attacked. That is a dinner, if you do it right.
It's like girl dinner.
Girl.
This Reddit sub, girl dinner, where women have the weirdest things to eat, and then it's just like a photo of the meal. Like, here is my girl dinner, butter and champagne. By the way, I murdered my ex-husband and I'm on the run from the police. And it's just like this craziest story. And you're like, what am I even reading? Please tell me this is not real.
That's amazing. So, all right. So he made the rice pudding for her. She's like me. She doesn't cook. It's just better for everyone if that doesn't happen.
Then after Erna leaves, Rosemarie supposedly receives a phone call from a client and he's asking for an appointment. And according to Heinz Pohlmann, Rosemarie wasn't expecting the client to actually show up, and that's why she didn't even bother getting dressed up. But then the man rang the doorbell, and Rosemarie supposedly ushered the man in the bedroom while Pohlmann was kind of hiding in the kitchen with his coat. Then she called out something like, "Frida, don't forget to bring bread." What do you think that means?
Is she trying to make the guy... I would immediately think she's trying to make the person think that someone's in the house and going to be returning to the house sometime soon.
Yeah. So that's what Pohlmann claims, that Rosemarie was pretending that her housekeeper or a friend was in the apartment and that she was hoping to make the client think someone else was nearby or returning soon enough. I also assume, because Pohlmann said he immediately understood what it meant, I assume it's maybe something they've done before.
Could be.
And then Pohlmann slipped out through the apartment door without the visitor ever seeing him or him seeing the visitor. And if that's true, the "Frida, don't forget to bring some bread" would have been the last words he ever heard Rosemarie say.
Right. Yeah. And then where did he go from there?
Well, after he had slipped out of the apartment unnoticed, he then arrived back at his home shortly before 3 o'clock. And then he claimed he didn't immediately go upstairs. Instead, he chatted for a while with his landlady, and apparently that's something he did almost every day. And I remember he said he had a cold, so he felt ill. Remember, he had the schnapps, because that helps. And so then he went upstairs and took a hot bath.
Then you need a nap. If you've had schnapps and a hot bath, the only next step is nap.
Not for him.
Oh, no.
No, because around 4 o'clock, his boyfriend then phones him, or his partner. He then leaves the apartment once more to deliver a gray suit to a female acquaintance. She was supposed to pass it along to a tailor for him for some alterations. Then he meets up with his boyfriend, and then later during his trial, Heinz Pohlmann claims that he couldn't actually remember exactly when he left home again that afternoon. He says it might have been before 6 o'clock or after 6. He was not sure.
Who can say?
Yeah, who can say? Not that it's important.
Right.
Yeah, to be fair though, I wouldn't be able to tell you such things most of the time, unless it's something I do as a routine every day. Like if they ask me, at what time did you leave the house when you walk the dogs? And I would say 7:30, because that's what I do most of the time. Or for whatever reason, it's a super special time of day where I have an appointment. But I think for most of us, it would be really hard, days, weeks, or months after the fact to know, did I leave the house at 5:20 or at 6:05?
Especially back then. Today, I can look at my phone and I've got apps. Yeah. I can tell when our garage door opened and there's doorbell cameras, so I can see if I've left the house. And I've got my calendar on my phone. But of course, none of that was an option back in the 1950s.
That's such a good point. Yeah. Also, nowadays, they wouldn't even ask you because you're tracked all the time anyway with your phone and your smartwatch and whatnot.
You can see where I am. I'm here.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, years later, when he published his memoirs, his memory suddenly became astonishingly precise.
Oh,
because
really?
now he claimed he had left his apartment exactly at 5:20 p.m. and he arrived 5 minutes later at his destination and he dropped off the suit and then he continued towards downtown Frankfurt at precisely 5:30.
Well, we know none of that's accurate. For sure, because...
How would we know? How would he know?
Your memory doesn't get better the longer time passes.
Plus, as you see, back then, I know exactly at 5:30. No, you probably don't know exactly it was 5:30.
No.
All right, so what else did he say about his whereabouts? According to this later version, he then spent time between 5:45 and 6:20 p.m. at a gay bar called the Barbarina, which was apparently a well-known gay bar, not officially gay bar because, it's against the law, but kind of the gay meeting spot in town.
Yeah.
Then he leaves and meets up with a friend at another bar. So, no, he didn't take a nap because he had the flu and taken a schnapps, or had a schnapps.
He just had to have some schnapps and carry on.
Yeah, he's out partying, yeah.
Good for him.
He heads to another bar and he claims that he meets a friend there at 6:30. Interestingly, this friend confirmed the meeting, but he remembered it was taking place at 6 o'clock instead, so not 6:30.
Yeah. I definitely think that 30 minutes is important. That's a significant amount of time. You can do a lot of bad stuff in 30 minutes. But I think it would have been more suspicious if Heinz had claimed that he was there at 6 o'clock, but didn't actually get there till 6:30, right? Like, what happened during those missing 30 minutes? But being someplace 30 minutes before the time you claim to be there, it feels less suspicious. Whether or not it really is, who can say?
I think Columbo would agree with us here.
Yeah.
All right, then the two men drove around in the friend's car, and then they came past where Rosemarie lived, and Heinz Pohlmann claimed that he saw her standing out on the sidewalk. And if that's true, that would have enormous implications for her estimated time of death, because that means she's still alive around, what did he say now, 6:45, 6:50, something like that?
Yeah.
But there are no independent witnesses who could confirm that sighting, and many investigators and also experts in the case are really skeptical about that statement. The friend then visited a sick relative in the hospital, while Heinz Pohlmann waited in the car for roughly 20 minutes, and then around 7:20 p.m. they drove to another bar, some kind of chicken bar. I don't know.
A chicken bar.
Something chicken bar. They arrived there around 7:40. Then they spent some time there, and then they returned to Frankfurt. And Pohlmann claimed that he arrived home at approximately 9:45, and he insisted that once he was back in his apartment, he stayed there for the remainder of the night. Yeah, he was sleeping it off, I guess. According to Pohlmann, he knew absolutely nothing about Rosemarie's death, and he was only made aware because on the morning of 2nd of November, at around 7:30, a friend phoned him and read him the newspaper report about Rosemarie's death. Only then, he said, did he realize Rosemarie had been murdered, and so Pohlmann then decides to go to the police, proactively, and within days then he becomes the prime suspect in this huge murder investigation.
Yeah. I have a theory, but I'm going to wait until I hear more about everything
I'm so interested in what you have to say.
He makes absolute sense as a suspect. He has financial problems, and then he comes into money all of a sudden, right after she's passed away. He admitted that he was in the apartment the day of and could maybe have been the last person to have seen her alive, except for her killer. So I guess whether he was simply an unfortunate man who happened to be one of the last people to see Rosemarie alive, or whether his carefully constructed timeline was trying to conceal something, nefarious. That's a question that I guess we just don't know yet, right? But have all of his claims and alibis checked out, at least more or less?
Yeah, for the most part, Pohlmann's timeline checked out. Like, there were witnesses that placed him at several locations later that afternoon and evening. And, the friends that he claimed he met remembered meeting him. And the people confirmed seeing him in the bar. So, yeah, his movements after leaving Rosemarie's apartment are surprisingly well documented.
Okay. And there's no witnesses around his time in the apartment after Erna left, right? So
yeah, exactly. So he pretty much could have told them whatever happened in that apartment.
Yeah. And that sudden influx of money. I have some thoughts brewing on this gentleman, or this man. He's very suspicious on paper.
Yeah, he definitely is very suspicious on paper.
The money thing is hard. That's hard.
Like, where did he get it from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess it's not a huge surprise to anyone that the Frankfurt police essentially built their whole case around him, yeah. So by the end of the investigation, the police remained convinced that they already had their man, and the courts, however, they weren't convinced they had any reliable proof of that. After all, Heinz Pohlmann wasn't the only name that came up during the investigation. Investigators reportedly worked through a long list of Rosemarie's regular visitors and business associates and hang-arounds, most of whom had the money and motive to want certain conversations to simply never happen. And some of those men were really quickly interviewed and, hush-hush, quietly cleared, occasionally with such a speed that struck contemporary journalists as suspicious. And the article you read is kind of hinting at a little bit of that. And then there were others who were apparently never seriously pursued at all, again, feeding the conspiracy theory flames that certain names just had so much weight that they could keep the names, or that the names could be kept off any formal witness list in the first place. And all of that meant that there was never a serious second suspect. You have to wonder why, right? But I think it's also why the case has stayed in the public eye and in the public imagination, because I think a lot of people felt that not all the avenues had been properly exhausted.
I get that.
So yeah, Pohlmann, he's the only real suspect, and so that leads to his arrest in February of 1958. But then he was released provisionally in December of that same year. And what do you think? What does Pohlmann do? He immediately signs a deal with the Munich-based magazine Quick, selling them his memoirs and his personal recollections of Rosemarie. Quick, the magazine, not content with just running his story, also put up a reward of 50,000 Deutsche Mark for information leading to the real killer. There's a screenshot I made. I sent it to you, Annie, and it says, Quick is looking for the murder of the Nitribitt, because she was the Nitribitt.
She looks amazing.
Yeah.
She looks amazing in this photograph. All of these pictures of her have really made me feel like I don't put any effort at all into my appearance or how I look in photographs. And I should make an effort.
She looks so effortlessly chic. That photo looks like she really just was caught in the moment.
It does.
Not posing.
But look at the angles. Well, she is a model.
Yeah.
She certainly knows her angles.
And there's the dog.
Joe.
There's Joe.
He looks like he's got spots in this picture.
You just see the back of his head.
Isn't that his body too? Doesn't he look like he's got a couple of little spots on his side?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I think he's white or really, really light brown and darker spots. Yeah. I understood socks. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Socks?
It's okay.
And then I read somewhere that the Frankfurt prosecutor's office, in combination with Rosemarie's mother, doubled that sum, the reward money, making it one of the biggest rewards in German history up to that point, because now it's like 100,000 Deutsche Mark, which is 4 houses.
That's a lot of money. And wait, is her mom back in the picture? And how does she have money for a huge reward?
So from what I understand, she inherited Rosemarie's money and valuables.
Okay, that makes sense.
And of course, the reward sum of 100,000 Deutsche Mark didn't bring anything of value, just a bunch of assholes trying to get the money. Like, there was not one single lead, apparently, that was useful. Hate these people.
Yeah.
Pohlmann was ultimately charged with murder in conjunction with aggravated robbery. The trial itself was, of course, a full-blown media circus. Journalists from across West Germany and quite a few from abroad packed into that Frankfurt courtroom every day. Illustrated magazines ran special editions, reporters staked out the courthouse steps. There was, by several accounts, like a carnival atmosphere for the whole proceeding, which is something I think we see over and over and over again when it comes to these huge infamous cases. The trial then finally opened at Frankfurt Regional Court on 20th of June 1960, so nearly bit more than 2.5 years after Rosemarie's death. And this is where all the early forensic failures come to bite them in the ass. Pohlmann's defense attorney was a man named Alfred Seidel, who would later go on to become Bavaria's interior minister, which I find so interesting. I always like it when we kind of... people who then go on to make like political careers or things like this, when they show up in cases like this as an attorney, which happens quite often, right?
Yes, it does.
So he builds this entire defense around attacking the one thing that the whole prosecution's timeline depends on, which is the time of death. The police had never measured the room temperature or the body's temperature at the scene, and there was no scientific way to pin down precisely when Rosemarie died, which meant there was no way to definitely place Pohlmann at the scene at the moment of the murder. Witnesses were even produced who claimed to have seen Rosemarie running errands at the local butcher shop and a dry cleaner after the time the prosecution said that she was already dead. Whether or not those sightings were accurate, or it was just well-meaning people misremembering dates, or, people who were under enormous media pressure, nobody can say for certain. But, there was just enough doubt.
Yeah. I keep coming back to two things. So the first is that she didn't eat the rice pudding while Heinz was there, right? Because the mystery man, arrived before she could eat. But then at some point that day, she did eat some of it. So does it make sense that you would eat rice pudding with a client or while a client is there? Especially as she was sort of a really high-end escort, like drinking champagne and eating caviar. But rice pudding?
I agree. I don't see it. Yeah.
Unless maybe she had like a longtime client that she treated more like a boyfriend. Is that a real thing that happens, like the boyfriend experience?
Yeah, but I think if it would have been such a close relationship with a client or an admirer, I think Heinz would have probably known who it was because they were very close friends and confidants. And also, she wouldn't be surprised if that guy came over, right?
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
But yeah, I don't see her. I think that's my impression that I have. I think she had like this outside persona, this escort persona where she was like fancy and luxurious, but also she had this kind of at-home persona where she was wearing a gray wool leisure suit, cleaning the apartment and eating rice pudding. And right. I don't think she would have been the person to maybe mix these two personas up and show her. I think that's stuff that she kept for herself and her close friends, probably.
Yeah.
That's just really me guessing here.
No, I totally get that. And then Heinz, he said that she was wearing just like a gray house suit. Was that the fancy 1950s version of a leisure suit? Like what she's wearing in that first photograph where she's sitting in the photo where she's next to her window? Like, is that what she was wearing?
I think that's exactly what she was wearing.
And then I
think that looks exactly like the description matches that photo, I think.
And then Heinz never said she changed before this person arrived or put any makeup on. None of that.
Yeah.
And then...
Not that I read anything like it that she did that. No.
Yeah. So then what was she wearing when she was found?
So from what I saw in the photos, she was wearing like a typical 1950s suit, with a pencil skirt and then nylon stockings and a girdle.
Okay, so then when did she change? Because it sounds like she had to...
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
When did she change? When did she eat and when did she change?
Yeah.
And that's the whole issue with this case. The timeline has so many holes. And then because of the premature decomposition and because of the turned up heat and the police then opening the windows, they just couldn't establish the time of death with any certainty. And so when did she do all these things?
Yeah,
But to be fair, we also don't know if Heinz Pohlmann is even remotely telling the truth about what happened from the time Erna left, until he then left the apartment. I mean, it's just as possible that there never was a client And now I wonder, did they check the phone call log? Could they do that in the 1950s? I think so, right? Because if she received a phone call from the client, there must have been a log.
Oh, that's true.
But then what does that prove? Some man called. That doesn't mean a man really came over.
Also true.
What if it was only Heinz? He cooks the meal, she eats, they talk, he asks her for money, and we know that she would often give him money, not only to help him out, but also in exchange for him to be kind of her personal assistant at times, I think.
That makes sense.
You know, like running errands, cooking rice pudding, apparently. So he asks her for money. She refuses this time because she was already in a bad mood because of the fight with the housekeeper. What if she felt as if the people around her tried to take advantage of her, and so she refuses? But Heinz is desperate. He needs money. They fight. We know he had temper issues.
Yeah.
And he murders her.
That is possible. The problem again is the changed clothes. If that's what she was wearing when he arrived, why would she have changed clothes to be murdered, right?
Maybe she dressed while they were talking because she had an appointment. Maybe somebody really called that, and he kind of, sometimes when you lie, you have to stick to the truth as close as possible. So he said somebody called and somebody came over. What if somebody called and she was about to get ready to leave the house?
Right. I also keep thinking about the towel under her head, which is reminding me of the Clutter family when Perry Smith tried to make the victims more comfortable.
That's interesting. You know what? I wasn't thinking of that case exactly, but I too thought it sounds like a thing someone who cared about her would do. Why would you place yeah, you said because of the blood, but...
No, I don't think that's anymore.
It sounds more like you tried to make her comfortable.
That's right. Yeah. Now that I know what the materials were, that doesn't make any sense at all. I think it's a comfort thing.
Okay, so then on 13th of July 1960, I read some sources that said 11th of July, doesn't really matter. Court acquitted Heinz Pohlmann. The verdict was because despite considerable suspicion surrounding the origin of the money in his possession immediately after the murder, the court could not establish his guilt with the certainty required for a conviction.
Mm-hmm.
It was essentially an acquittal built entirely on reasonable doubt. And that reasonable doubt was manufactured by the very evidentiary chaos the police had created themselves in the first 10 or 20 minutes at the crime scene. And the prosecution, they didn't even bother appealing. They were like, yeah, that's done.
Yeah.
And with that, the murder of Rosemarie Nitribitt became, and remains to this day, unsolved.
Oh, that's annoying. Ugh.
But that's not all. I think this is a good spot to stop for this week, and next week we will be back with the third and final part where we'll talk about the other suspects, all the conspiracy theories or the theories about who could have done it, the rumors, the pop culture phenomenon Rosemarie had become, and also about what happened to Poodle Joe afterwards.
Oh, Poodle Joe. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this one. I'm going to be marinating on it, I think, until we hear the next.
I can't wait to hear what you think.
Right? I have some thoughts. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
We have something good.
We both have something good, don't we?
We have something good, yes. You go, you tell it. My voice is like, eh.
We have an incredibly talented listener named Aaron Burks, and he is a maritime artist. And you can check him out, Aaron, Aaron Burks. He's at Aaron Burks Fine Art on Instagram. And he does these absolutely beautiful...
Well, he does paintings of ships, I think. He also does artwork with ropes.
Yes. And he's been doing this whole project where he's doing portraits of, I think, is it portraits of the everybody who went down with the Arizona? I think he's been,
yes, right.
slowly been doing that. He's incredibly talented. And he does a lot of, the word I'm trying to remember is the the word. I just saw the tall ships not that long ago, but he does a lot of art involving these, like the bounty, like the kind of ships we talk about on our episodes. And so, excuse me, long story long, he has done this absolutely beautiful pen and ink. Like, I think it's all done with a fountain pen. And it says Fresh Hell Podcast, and it's got these little crows. I'm going to be shipping
so pretty.
Yours. I have both of them here. There's one for each of us. And I'm taking mine to get framed, and yours is going to be securely in the box that I'm sending your way.
Yeah, and I think the reason why he did it is because of the initials in the fake Hitler diaries when we talked about the FH.
That's it. Yeah. It's amazing. We have the most talented listeners.
So cool. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
We do.
Go check out Aaron Burks. You won't be disappointed. His stuff is very, very cool.
It's such an honor every time somebody sends us like these handcrafted things.
It's amazing. All right. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, or any of our other episodes, please do us the huge favor of rating, reviewing, and subscribing on your favorite podcast app. It genuinely makes a huge difference, and it helps new listeners find us. Also, a quick note on that. On Spotify, you can only leave a star rating, not a written review, but you can comment under the episode, and we love that because we can even reply to you. You can also comment under our YouTube episodes. We love that. And don't forget to tell a friend about us. Preferably one with a soft spot for glamorous mysteries, botched investigations, and a healthy suspicion of anyone who suddenly buys a brand new Mercedes right after their rich friend turns up dead. We're not judging. We're just saying we have thoughts.
Yeah, it's not a good look.
It's not a good look. If you'd like to help keep the podcast going and get access to all kinds of bonus content, you can join us over on Patreon. That's where you'll find our monthly live get-togethers, early ad-free episode releases, and Cinema Macabre. We really don't know how to properly thank our Patreon supporters enough. You are genuinely the reason that we are still doing this, so thank you.
Yeah.
We'd also love to see you in our Facebook group. It's just the nicest group of people. And that discussion is constant. It's always going. There's always something happening and being discussed over there. You can drop us an email at freshhellpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're old school, our P.O. box address and all that jazz is on our website, which is freshhellpodcast.com. And don't forget to send us your story for our Halloween listener episode. We really do want to hear your creepy, mysterious, entertaining, mind-boggling encounters with the macabre, paranormal, or extraterrestrial.
Yeah. And that's it for this week. Please tell your pets we said hi, hug them, cuddle them, treat them kindly. If you're also in an area where it's incredibly hot at the moment, please put out some water for all the animals and insects and birds. Not that birds are not animals. You know what I mean.
Yes.
Be kind to them, be kind to your fellow human being, and be kind to yourself.
And if you find yourself going through hell,
keep going. Tschüss.
Bye.